get on to part 2 of this most weird history, and I have the most beautiful Amy with me.
Oh, hello, beautiful Karen. Hello.
Yeah, my beautiful friend. I know we only live in beauty at this end, don't we, Amy?
Yes, that's great, Karen.
I'm looking up because what it is this is what I've got to explain to people. I just find it really, really strange that when these families don't like each other, are fighting each other, and are claiming the crown, that we go from the Plantagenets, the House of York, into the Tudors, but they've all got the same names. And in that last video, it was Edward III, Edward IV, Edward V. Then you've got Henry VI, Henry VII, Henry VIII, and don't forget there was earlier Henrys. And then you've got Richard II, Richard III. And it's all a bit bizarre. They all hate each other, but they're picking names from, like, hey, we hate them, but let's pick their name. Let's have the same name as them. We just won't be called the fourth, we'll be called the fifth or the sixth. I just find that all really strange. I think they've totally hidden our history. I don't think there was, maybe there wasn't such things as the Tudor time and all that. They just called, that we are calling it that, but I don't know, because, you know, there's Henry VI was a Plantagenet, but Henry VII was a Tudor. So how can that be? And then you think, hey, we hated those Plantagenets, but let's choose his name to make him a king. You're not Henry VI, you're Henry VII now. Do you see what I mean? I just find that all a bit, it's all a bit strange.
It is, that's weird, yes.
And you know that
I agree.
Our whole history line is his story, isn't it? None of it adds up.
That's right.
What's your thoughts then, Amy?
Oh, it's just, it's really
confusing?
Kind of, you know, confusing. Yes, that's what I was going to say. It's confusing, all the, you know, tracing the lines. But I didn't realize they were all from different houses like that.
Yeah, not
like
only have you got different kings, you've got different houses. And, I mean, we've been in the House of Windsor for a while. The Queen is Windsor.
Yes. Yeah, she's Windsor. And I don't know how long, it's been a long time, I guess, you've had the Queen of Windsor.
I can't remember. I don't think Victoria was, but we're only. I haven't done it all. I can't remember it myself. But we're on the Plantagenet, and don't forget, because of all these errors, and he is a Plantagenet, but I don't know whether they could take it from Edward, and not just Edward is illegitimate, Richard is illegitimate. Back to this line. Which, in fact, let's just get the video up. I'm just going to get the video up to show people. We are actually wanting to do Henry VI, but I've got to go back to the past. Hang on a sec. So I'm going to recap history. Here is Edward III up here, and Queen Philippa, they reckoned, was a coloured lady or a black lady, whichever way you want it to be said. Oh no, I've put the video on. Let's go back. Whoopsie-daisy. I need the map on it. I need the map on its own. No, Amy, no, I've missed the map. Ah. Here we go. Oh, on a bit more. No, too far now. Oh, for goodness sake. There, right, we're there. So, Edward is married to a coloured person, and I think what that is because she's not English. Oh, I don't know what it is, but it looks like their children could be illegitimate. So that's why everybody else's children down here are illegitimate, because of what was going on here. But what it is that Henrys and all that come off these lines here, and then these turn into the Tudors, and then these ones here go into the House of York, and then come down and then go into the Tudors. But it just seems really strange to me that Henry VI, where is he? Where has he gone? Henry VI was not a good king, and he was deposed here. So then it went over to Henry no, then it went to them. So after Henry VI, it was Edward IV. Then somewhere in here there's another Edward, which was his son, and all his children were illegitimate. And then it went on to Richard III, from Richard II's up here, and then it goes down. It's just so confusing, Amy.
I know, Karen.
I think something happened from here with Henry VI when he was deposed. So something happened in this lot here and finishes off in this lot here. That's what I reckon. To Elizabeth I, but she was the last Tudor. So the Tudors were Henry VII, Henry VIII, and Elizabeth I. So it's only three. It was three in the House of York. But the Plantagenets had run England for about 400 years.
Well.
Whereas the House of York and then the Tudors was about 100 years with three royalty people. But anyway, we're going back. I hope everybody gets that, because it is so confusing, which is why I put arrows and everything all over my last map. Do you get any of that, Amy? Do you get any of that?
Yeah. Yes, I think so, Karen. That was helpful the way you put it in the video to explain it. Because it really is
so confusing.
Yes.
Sorry, Amy, you were saying?
Oh, I was just saying that they really like their same names over and over, like you had kind of said before, like they're all Henry or Edward, and it's like after a while it gets confusing because it's when same names different, you know, as the numbers go up or whatever, but you've got Henry, Edward, fourth, fifth, and after a while it's like, wow, and then they come from these different houses on top of that, so it's just it gets confusing.
It's going to be another video I'm going to do in the future, but I wanted to get past this bit first. Charles II looks like a black man as well, and James James II or James III looks like a black man as well, because I've got pictures of him which they're on the internet as black men.
That's fascinating.
So we weren't ruled by fair skin and all that. They're probably some really grungy old pirate-looking coloured people. I don't know. I don't mean that rude. It sounds like I'm being rude, but you know what I mean. Like they're just totally different to what they've explained to us. Like Charles II looks like he's Portuguese, or he's got very dark skin.
Yeah.
But no, that's another video. We're going to be doing Henry VI today, and that's this one here, because that's the last Plantagenet before it became the House of York. So that everybody knows, Amy can't see what's on the screen, but she's always happy to listen, and she trusts me anyway. Don't you, Amy?
That's right, Karen.
So she doesn't mind listening to me explaining it. So if things are out a little bit, it's just because Amy's listening rather than watching. But I put in there, was Henry a good king? It says, without a doubt, by his count, Henry was a terrible king. He lost all his gains, made by his father in France, but then why did they want to just run France? Why can't we just run our own country? And led the country into civil war. He wasn't a good king for terrible and warlike times, but he could be compassionate and feel deeply. Oh, see, that's what we wanted. We needed a compassionate, feeling deeply king, and they wanted him to go to war, and he didn't want to go to war, Amy. Yeah,
that's right, Karen. I know.
I'm being kind and compassionate. You can have all your land back.
That's right.
We don't really have any proof, do we, that any of this is real? I mean, that was written in 2015. But anyway, we're going to move on to another one now. How did Henry die? Henry VI, King of England, died at the Tower of London during the night of May the 21st, 1471. Most likely murdered on the orders of Edward IV. Now, Edward IV is a House of York, but I'm just going to stop the video. I'm going to now. I've stopped anyway. I didn't explain about them, did I? We're just stopping for a moment here. I'm really sort of stunned with all this, because Edward III. Oh, I've got to go back to the map. That's why I was at the map. I'm going back to the map. Edward IV married this lady, and their children were deemed illegitimate, right? Which means all of these people are illegitimate. But supposingly, this person should have had a chromosome in his male side, which he didn't have. And neither did Henry, which goes back to this line up here. But so they were saying that when they were trying to, so he was definitely Richard the third they'd found, or the second, whichever one it is.
Right.
The second. I can't even see it. It's so faint now. I can't remember which one which is the second or the third. But anyway, he is missing some chromosome in his male side. So is Henry the Sixth. Sorry, Henry the Seventh.
Yeah.
I'm getting confused, Amy. Henry the Seventh. He's missing the chromosome in it himself. And these two link up to Elizabeth the First. But what it is not only are they saying that he is illegitimate, Edward the Fourth was, because they think that he was born prematurely, or there was things wrong with his date of birth. The king wasn't there for it. It was a very hush-hush christening, and yet a year later another baby was born, and that had a great big christening. So they're reckoning that Edward the Fourth was illegitimate. So he's illegitimate at this point, and then he's also illegitimate from this point up here with Edward the Third. So Edward the Fourth is twice illegitimate. Oh, it's so confusing. That's if you believe the stories that are put out by everybody now. So, he's illegitimate, and then these two and him are illegitimate from being up here. Is everybody with us? Everybody but I'm with you. So confusing.
Yeah. Yes, we're with you.
Thank you, Amy. We're moving on a little bit now. So, what was Henry the Sixth famous for? Let's have a look.
Okay.
He was born in 1921, Windsor, Berkshire, England. Died the 22nd, 1741. Oh, he was only 50. King of England from 1422, so he was basically 1 year old when he became king, to 1461. And from 1470 to 1471, a pious and studious recluse whose incapacity for government was one of the causes of the War of the Roses. So there you go. And I've just, we now know that obviously there's I mean, if you looked at it from the from the globe world, then they're dragons, they're red and white. But when you look at them, I think that they're not. They are not sphinx. Is it sphinxes?
Griffins?
Griffins, that's it. Oh, God. Sorry, I'm confused. Griffins. They're griffins. And the griffins are fighting.
Yes.
There wasn't dragons, they're griffins. And that's all part of Tartaria, because Tartaria fought with griffins. So that's where it gets all confusing. Right. And I just think, Amy, didn't I? I sent you the videos of the War of the Roses, and what's it like?
Oh, yes, it was so, that was really complicated, the Wars of the Roses.
Not anybody has the same outcome, do they? They always, and then suddenly it's like, on your marks, get set, go. And then they're in, then they're out. And what it is that even though they're telling you the kings of England, they don't tell you that, say, Henry the Sixth was out, then he was in, then he was out, Edward was in, Edward the Fourth was in, then he was out, then he was in, and they don't put that in our history, that they were in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, depending on who else was running England, because it was the French who were there.
Right.
So it's all mega confusing, and you're like, what? But I just think that the red griffin and the white griffin was Tartaria, and I think this is where it. The English Empire to me is Tartaria. I don't understand how they're saying that Asia and all that ran everything, because it looked like we did.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
And also, if we've never been told the truth in the first place, because I got a little meme sent to me today to basically say that Scotland was Jerusalem. So if these places are what they say they really are, say Scotland is Jerusalem and England's something else, and it makes sense why it's so manic here, why everybody's fighting mad here and so forth. But we don't know, do we? Because it's all just his story instead now.
That's right, Karen.
It's true. Yeah. So it is. We're just going through what it says in here, because obviously Edward the Fourth, successes Henry the Sixth, and then he was there for 9 years. But then he was in and out, as we've already said. Let's go down here. What was wrong with Henry VI? In 1453, Henry VI fell into an... had to think about what that word meant. An inertia that lasted 18 months. Some historians believe that he was suffering from a catatonic schizophrenia, a condition characterized by symptoms including stupor, whatever that is, loss of consciousness, mutism. Others have referred to it as a simple breakdown. Well, that could be a lie to cover up what really went on, because I've already said to Amy today that, you know, I was trying to, first of all, when I was looking yesterday, I was actually looking up Elizabeth I, because she's covered in white, and I'm wondering whether she was a coloured lady and she powdered herself in white to make herself look white. But she wasn't, she was a coloured lady. So we don't know that for sure. And then on Facebook, people sent me loads of pictures of a dark, you know, a black Elizabeth I.
Right.
So this bit about Henry VI could all be just part of their plan. They called him a schizophrenia when he wasn't. They've just put that in there while something else happened. But it lasted for 18 months.
Right.
But if you were a kind, caring, compassionate person and you don't want all this and they're making you go to war and fight, maybe that's why they had to call him a schizophrenic.
That makes sense to me, yes.
I don't know. We don't know anymore, do we? We're just going through bits of history here. Right, we're going down now. Did King Henry of France go crazy? Did King Henry of France go crazy? So what, he's king of France as well.
Oh, yeah.
It says the condemnation of the murder of his own brother has caused him to go manic. Well, there you go. So why don't they explain that there then? It's the death of his brother. And that's why he also tries to convince himself that it was God who chose him to rule over France. It's no wonder that Henry had been tripping. At least Henry named his first son Francis, poorly in honour of his brother too. So if they deposed him, why didn't his son become king? That was the next in line. But it didn't. It went over to Edward IV. So there you go.
Yeah.
So they call him a schizophrenic up there, but here it's because his brother died. And he was obviously very upset about that. Well, it just gets more and more, you know, nothing ever adds up when you look at this. Why Henry killed his cousin? Well, then why would... Oh, it's Henry V. We don't want him. We're on Henry VI. Who was the best king of England? Let's have a look. William III.
Okay.
Was the best king of England, they say. But they'll have him down as a warring monk. You know, I bet he was warring, that's why. And gaining many lands. That's why he would be called that. But anyway, it says one of the greatest kings of England, yet one of the least remembered. No one could have been more successful at deposing James II. And James II was a coloured man. Remember I told you, James II was coloured?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Or at negotiating the terms for a monarchy more acceptable to Parliament. So that's probably what was going on. Maybe there was different... I don't... If you understand what I mean, different... I hate saying this because we're all one people and I love everybody. But obviously the different... I don't know. What was it? Different colours? What were they arguing about?
Yeah. I know. I don't know. And then maybe the religions were part of it with the Protestant and Catholic, do you think? Was some of it maybe? At some point later on,
I also think it's that's another part that's really, really important. Because Henry VIII broke away from the Catholic Church. And no one really... They put it in history, but they don't call it a momentous great big change. Because it is. You're making a new religion and away from the Catholic. That would have been an almighty great change.
It was, exactly.
I mean, that religion's newer than most religions now. The Church of England.
Right. That's right.
That's what I think. So, do you see what I mean? It's from when this king was deposed until Henry... Well, I suppose Elizabeth I, but she's now into a new era there because we're not part of of Catholic anymore. We're now the Church of England.
That's right.
It's just, isn't it manic? It's just absolutely bizarre. Anyway.
It is.
We want to keep it on Henry VI. And these don't say Henry. That's Henry VII. Henry VI. How old is Henry VI? 49 years old when he died. And these are all different stories. Who was the most loved king? Oh, Tucunham, Peter the First of Russia. Oh, there's loads of them. Alexander the Third of Macaron, Henry the Eighth of England was the most loved. I don't think so.
Oh, wow. Yes.
His aunt had to murder all his wives to change their religion. Anyway,
I know.
let's move on. There's not much more there about Henry VI. Let's have a look. Henry VI, Holy Roman Emperor.
Huh.
Oh, Amy's found it too, haven't you, Amy, about the Roman Emperor?
Well, I just typed in Henry VI, and I put Holy Roman Emperor, and it came up, but it said is a member of the Hohenstaufen dynasty, the king of Germany from 1169, and Holy Roman Emperor from 1191 until his death. From 1194, he was also king of Sicily, which that's, Italy. He was the second son of Emperor Frederick Barbarossa and his consort Beatrix of Burgundy. So that's what, when you put in Henry VI of Holy Roman Emperor, that's what it would bring up about that.
He was the second son of Emperor Frederick Barbarossa and his consort Beatrix of Burgundy. Well educated in Latin language as well as Roman and common law, Henry was also the patron of poets and skilled poet himself. In 1186, is this the same person?
I feel like this has to be a different person, I would think.
That's not the right person, it's too early.
Yeah, it's too early, and it's saying it's from Germany. So they must have had...
Right, and we're going off this one. Just to say, we've come off that Henry VI because it's a different Henry, but that was quite interesting to see that he was a Roman emperor.
Yes, it was.
That's what I thought.
Was. Me too.
Bit shocked because this is what I'm saying. When you start looking things up, there's always bits more information. It's always more confusing. But Henry VI may have had a sex coach, plus 4 more curious facts about his life. So let's go down here. It says Henry VI, 1421 to 1471, was not a successful king, having inherited the throne as an infant. His incompetency for government was a contributing factor to the War of the Roses. Well, I mean, he was really young. I mean, I don't know how they expect a 1-year-old to rule everything.
I know.
So it's not him, is it? It's the people behind him that obviously caused all the problems. War of the Roses, and ultimately his murder he was murdered, in 17... So he was murdered at 50 in 1471. Yeah. Here, Rachel Dinings brings you the most curious facts about his life, from his relationship with his mother, Margaret of Anjou, to his mysterious illness of 18-month illness. So here we go. We'll have a quick look in here. How much do we know about Henry VI? We can reveal the most curious facts about the king's life, from his relationship with his wife. So he was married, Margaret of Anjou, to his mysterious 18-month illness. And he had a son, didn't he? I don't understand why his son didn't become king. So it was obviously, it was a battle then, wasn't it? Somebody... I'm the leader now. When Henry's wife, Margaret of Anjou, visited the king's bedroom, they were sometimes joined by trusted attendants. What? I'm not sure if I want to read this. Simple and Puritan, he is now Henry VI, often described by historians and scholars and the label certainly fits. The medieval king spent his free time meditating on the sufferings of Christ, staying in monasteries, and practicing devoto modernia, a modern religious form that advocated humanity and obedience. Wow. It was therefore unsurprising when historian Lauren Johnson revealed that Henry VI may have had a sex coach in his marriage bed in 2019. Johnson, who had been investigating the king's private life, claimed to have discovered evidence in the National Archives and royal household accounts that suggests Henry and his wife Margaret of Anjou were occasionally joined by trusted attendants in the bedroom. I wonder what they were doing then.
awful.
We're not going into all that though, but it was because the famous chaste Henry didn't know what he was doing. I think it's entirely possible that it had reached a certain point where it perhaps became necessary to make clear to him what he should be doing.
Oh, my goodness.
Johnson told the Observer that couldn't be done in a public way at all. The King's Chamber is the most private place where you could be having this conversation or indeed checking what's going on. What the hell is going on? I'm a bit confused. I didn't expect that one, Amy.
I know, Karen. That's really something. But I was reading something too. It said Henry was 8 months old when he succeeded to the English throne, and shortly afterwards, by the death in 1422 of his maternal grandfather, Charles VI, he became titular King of France. Unlike his father, Henry was disinclined to warfare, and when Joan of Arc revived French patriotism, the English gradually began to lose their French possessions. And so it said the unpopularity of the government, especially after the loss of the English conquest in France, encouraged Richard, Duke of York, to claim the throne. And through York was killed 1460.
Yeah, that's Richard that's what I was reading. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, oh my gosh.
Well, Edward comes first, then comes Richard.
Yes.
They're on the same line. It's really weird because Edward's first and Richard's second. It doesn't go Richard then Edward. It goes Edward then Richard, so you sort of have to go along. Anyway, that's what it's like.
Yes.
It says, Henry VI was not a vengeful king. If anything, he was quite the opposite. He once ordered a deceased traitor's impaled quarter to be taken down, commenting, "I will not have any Christian men so cruelly handled for my sake." And in 1450 was issued 144 pardons following an attempted rebellion by the Duke of York. That's the House of York, isn't it?
Yes.
While the king was certainly a kind man, he made for a poor monarch. He failed spectacularly as a ruler, losing 2 knighthoods. Losing 2 kingdoms. Not only did he lose Lancastrian France, but he in his ability to provide good government resulted in the War of the Roses and eventually his own murder. And I do think the War of the Roses is this where the Griffins are and everything.
Yes.
So I do think we're going to have to look into this a bit more. We can't do it now. We've been going for 27 minutes and we still haven't got anywhere, Amy.
It's so much, I know.
The miracle of Henry VI, how the weak medieval king became a saint. Strange that, isn't it? Despite his poor leadership, people across England rated Henry as a saint-like figure following his death on the 21st of May 1471. An increasing number of people embarked on pilgrimages to Chertsey Abbey, where the king was buried. Before Richard III had Henry's remains reinterred at St George's Chapel in Windsor. The idea of Henry, the holy man, was rapidly accepted, and in the 1500s a book materialised that suggested the king could perform miracles even after his death, from resurrecting plague victims to saving a servant unjustly accused of capital offence. So why did the cult of St Henry take off? The answer, claims Stuart, lies in the fact that he was unjustly murdered. There was whispered pity for a king who, after his disposition, was treated as a thief and then put to death without having committed a crime. Golly, it sounds horrible, doesn't it? I don't think I'd want to be a king.
Me neither. It sounds horrible.
What do you make of all that, Amy? Just stop that there. What do you make of all that, Amy?
Well, I just think it's really fascinating, and the people venerated him as a saint, you were saying. But
yeah, that's what this article says. So basically, I think it's all a load of rubbish which they've talked about him. He obviously just wasn't, maybe, strong.
Right.
And they took him as a weak man and said all this stuff and did all this stuff which wasn't true, and murdering him because he didn't fall into what they wanted. He didn't want it the way that they wanted it.
Yeah, that's how it sounds. Yes. And I was looking at a timeline that said that in 1454, Henry regains his senses, but disaffected nobles take matters into their own hands. Supporters of the Dukes of York and Lancaster take sides. And then the next year was the 1455 was beginning of the War of the Roses. So it sounds like you were saying they didn't like Henry the Sixth because he didn't like war.
Yeah, I just read that bit before that I've got on the computer was sort of talking about similar things, so I left that there for people to read while you were saying what you were saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I know. They always want wars, and he didn't want to be a part of that, it sounds like. So
shut my door as well, because it's quite late when we're doing this, and I need to shut my office door. He was the youngest person to become King of England and the first and only English monarch to be crowned King of France.
Yes. Yes, that's interesting too. I didn't realize he would be a king of
He was
two.
King of France and King of England.
Exactly. Yeah, I find that
But this,
amazing.
I think when he was King of France, this is where he'd gone from being deposed, then Edward comes in, then Edward goes, then Henry comes back, and when he comes back, he's the King of France. I think that's, I don't know. Anyway, let's read what it says. Henry became King of England on the 1st of September 1422 at the age of 9 months. How the hell could he become the King of England at 9 months?
Of course, I know.
So that means that there would have been all these people running it for him. So
that's right.
You have to look at those people, because he wouldn't have been responsible to at least 16, 18. He just wouldn't have wanted to know, would he?
That's exactly right. Yeah, a little baby can make decisions, so who was making all the decisions is who we'd have to look at.
He was the youngest person to inherit the throne. Less than 2 months after he succeeded the throne, Henry added another crown to his belt. How could a baby of 1.5 add another crown to his belt?
I know, that's ridiculous.
His grandfather, King Charles VI, died on the 21st of October, and Henry was proclaimed King of France in line with the terms of the 1420 Treaty of Troyes. The military success of Henry's father, Henry V, meant that England held vast territories in France. These were, however, gradually lost over the course of Henry's reign, and by 1453, the end of the 100 Years' War, and I did that in my video yesterday, it wasn't 100 years, it was 116 years. So why didn't they call it the 116-Year War?
Right.
England was left with only Calais.
Yeah.
That's probably why it's called Normandy and all that across the top of France, isn't it? He tried to stop the War of the Roses by implementing a love day. Oh, I think I like the sound of Henry VI.
Me too.
So devoted was Henry to the idea of peace. There you go, he was a peaceful man. They lied.
Yes.
He was a peaceful man. So they've lied. He once attempted to instigate a love day to help reconcile the warring fractions of the War of the Roses. The premise was as follows, as a parade or something would take place on the 24th of March 1458, in which the leading Lancastrians would hold hands with the leading Yorkists, and they walked through the streets of London. Needless to say, the plan did nothing to quell the hostility between the two sides. Now, has anybody ever heard that before? Because I haven't.
Me neither. I never did either.
That is not put as part of our history, you know, like this is just these people have been writing about it since.
That's right.
So, the War of the Roses, York versus Beaufort. Why did Henry have such a problem with conflict? His uncles were ambitious men who blighted Henry's youth and sometimes violent disputes, she explains. Time and again, Henry was called upon, despite his youth and experience, to resolve their quarrels, expected to serve as final arbiter of complex adult dynamics that had taken him before he was born. So he was used. He was a sensitive, serious child. It is little wonder that he shrunk from conflict in later life. He didn't want it that way. Oh, I don't want this. I want peace.
That's right.
Surely he should be put down as one of the best kings then, because he wanted peace.
That's right. I agree.
Who wants to fight and take over the world? They've made it look like taking over countries. Oh, that meant you were a good king. It just meant you were a barbarian.
I agree. That's right.
Oh, dearie me.
Yes.
And that's basically the end of it on that bit there. So it's all I'm really sure it's to do with the War of the Roses.
Yes.
I've always said that, haven't I, Amy?
You have, Karen. That's right.
I don't know, something happened then. That's where we started to become the British Empire and everything after that.
Exactly.
We'll look up a tiny bit more about Henry VI, but I really enjoyed reading that to know that he was a good king.
Yeah, me too. I enjoyed that too, Karen.
Amy, we're going to stop in a moment because all the other facts. So here it says doomed facts about Henry VI, the mad king of England. So they were determined to do that to him because he didn't want to fight. And the fighting was happening, and obviously he didn't know how to stop it. So he thought about trying to create a day to stop it, although that does seem funny. You're stabbing each other with, let's come to London, and you hold each other's hands and walk through London. That does seem a bit strange, but it looks like he was there for peace. And they're deeming him as mentally ill because he wanted peace.
Right. That's really terrible, but that's what it really sounds like.
I mean, it says in the opening thing, some people just weren't born to rule, and Henry VI is one of them. From his tragic childhood, this is saying something completely different, to his tumultuous reign and violent end, the feeble and weak-minded Henry managed to send England into complete tailspin, starting one of the most brutal conflicts in the country's history. So where did it all go wrong? Why was Henry such a terrible king? Discover the dark side of England's most unfortunate monarch. Well, we'll have a quick look at this, but the last one says something completely different.
I know.
Henry VI was born with an extremely large shoes to fill. His father was Henry V, one of the most legendary warrior kings in history. Henry V was brutal, cunning and ruthless, and his reign saw England become more powerful than it had ever been. But it was all about to fall apart.
Yes.
Henry V was nearly king of England. Was nearly king of England and France. What do they mean by that?
Yeah.
The 100-Year War against France was raging, but it wasn't just against France, was it? But it was 106 was raging during Henry V's reign, and he was quick to take advantage of it with legendary victories like at the Battle of Agincourt. Yeah, that's it. Henry V, with a hair's breadth of taking all of France for himself. Had he lived, the two kingdoms would likely have become one, and the entire history of Europe would have been completely different. But fate had... his parents fell in love at first sight. Henry ravaged swathes of the country for himself. He was so unstoppable, he got the King of France to name him the heir to the throne, just to stop his warpath. While on campaign, he also caught a glimpse of the French king's stunning daughter, Catherine of Valois. Marrying a French princess was a shrewd political move, not to mention the fact that her beauty left Henry absolutely floored. And they put two actors in here. We've got two big English actors, female and male. No. He soon married after they gave birth to a son, Henry VI. Henry and England with him on the top of the world. Then, in an instant, everything the warrior king fought so hard for turned to dust. I'm just going to get rid of that stupid advert which is going across there. That's gone. Henry V was set to become King of France. All he had to do was outlive the feeble King Charles VI. But he didn't make it. Henry was only 35 years old when he suddenly fell ill with a painless illness. In merely days, the king went from being virtual and formidable man to a corpse. The king was dead, and England's fortunes died with him. Wow, that's quite a big statement, isn't it? England's fortunes died with him.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds to me like he was murdered or something at
It
35.
does. It just tells you a painful illness.
No,
It
it
doesn't
wasn't.
tell
It,
you.
it was. It wasn't. It didn't hurt him, but he became ill and died.
Yes.
Henry V missed out on becoming the King of France by merely 2 months. King Charles VI passed almost right after him. Oh, how interesting that is. Instead, the infancy Henry VI became king, and no one realised it at the time, but that was probably the worst thing that could have possibly happened for England.
Well,
He never even met his father. That's sad, isn't it?
it is.
Henry V never met his son. Henry VI was just a few months older when his father croaked and became the youngest
Oh,
king of England ever. When his granddaddy Charles VI passed soon after, he swaddled babe found himself king of not only one but two countries. In name, he was the most powerful person on earth, but Henry VI was just an infant, and while he came of age, the most ruthless nobles in England kept busy by playing the games on the throne. Now that just sounds incredible, don't you think? That
I
this
do.
baby is the King of England and all these nobles. So it was nothing to do with Henry VI, what they did. They did it. They did all the crap things, not Henry VI.
That's right.
No, we're recording again now, Amy. Amy, this is all just
Okay.
ludicrous, blaming that he did all this stuff when he's a little infant and all these
I
nobles.
know.
And what were you going to say, Amy?
Well, so like we were saying, he didn't have anything to do with ruling the country. It was all the nobles, behind it. And then
He just seems a kind, caring person.
yes. And I said, they make us think that Henry VI, that everything was his fault, but he was only a baby, so
Yeah.
he wasn't doing anything. And I said, not unlike today, where we feel that we have presidents and prime ministers, but we just know that it's not them that's doing it. It's people behind the scenes.
Yeah, always people behind the scenes doing it to us. Joe says here, Amy, it says he never even knew his mother.
I was just reading that. It's so sad. They kept him away from his mother.
Only a boy was about to be ripped from grasp. The English nobles didn't trust the French princess to begin with, and once the king was gone, they'd had enough. Afraid she'd influence the future king against them, they kept her away from the child as much as possible. Aww.
I know.
Henry VI spent most of his childhood in care of various English aristocrats, with only a limited contact with his mother. Oh, God.
I know, it's terrible.
Henry was King of France, but not really. Charles VI had promised France's throne to Henry V. The warrior's king death changed everything. Technically, Henry VI should have become king, but the French weren't about to let a squabbling infant claim the crown, especially not an English one. The French were quick to ignore the promise and name Charles VI King of France. Scrambling, the English named their only king, Henry VI, King of France, in opposition. Unfortunately, the next few years would prove Henry VI was not the man of his father. Soon everything was about to fall apart.
Aww.
Henry VI holds two important distinctions in history. He was the youngest king of England ever, and the only king of England to become the King of France also. Pretty cool if you ask me, but it was all the downfall from there. Number 10. In Henry's defence, he took the throne at a pretty rough time in England. His father's campaigns had taken a toll on the English economy, leading to a depression known as the Great Slump. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Because we're in a great slump now, aren't we?
Exactly. And we had our depression in America in, 1920s or whatever, or 1930s. I forget the exact dates, but we had a depression. So, and we're in a slump now, like you said. The whole world is in a slump.
Yeah.
A great slump.
Plus, having squabbling nobles running the country for 16 years didn't help. So no one explains that. It wasn't he was a bad king. Unfortunately, he should never have been king because he was a baby. The country needed a strong leader to lead them, and so the nobles were running it all, thinking that they were being clever doing it. But I think that's the nobles. I think they're always ruining history. These nobles.
I agree.
Anyway, the country needed a strong leader to lead it at this difficult time, and Henry was probably the worst possible man for the job. Henry's mother, Catherine, saw her star fall extremely quickly. One day she was the Queen of England and set to become the Queen of France. The next she was widowed, stranger in foreign land, kept away from her child. She found solace in the arms of a man called Owen Tudor. Sound familiar? Though Catherine and Tudor were two nobodies in their day, their union would form the seed of one of the most powerful dynasties in the English history. Oh, yes! I remember it now in some of the history when they're fighting in the War of the Roses that she's there.
Yes.
So there you go then. So it was her trying to take over the England for her son. She didn't want him in that pool of people. She wanted a different pool of people running England.
Exactly.
Wow. So that's explained a little bit. She seeded a legendary dynasty. Turns out Catherine would get the last laugh, while her son Henry VI didn't exactly thrive as king, as you'll see. Her grandson, Henry Tudor, would ultimately end up the victor of the War of the Roses. His line would see one of England's worst ever rulers, the infamous Henry VIII, and one of the greatest, Elizabeth I. But I don't know. I mean, he changed, Henry VIII, that man there, there's a picture of him, he changed all of history by breaking away from the Catholic Church. So whether we like it or not, he totally changed our history. He totally changed our history.
Yes. Yes, he did.
So I'm not sure if he was one of the worst rulers. I'm not saying we got there the best way, and we don't even know if that's right, do we? But
that's right.
That's really strange, because they're putting him down as one of the worst ones.
I know.
He got off on a bad start. Even as a child, Henry VI was feeble, shy and nervous. Unlike his father, bloodshed terrified him, and his
naivete.
Yeah. Are you reading it with me, Amy?
Yes. I got it up too.
And made it easy for just about everyone to take advantage of him. If you thought the English court was messy before he became king, things only got worse once he took the throne. He was prone to taking favourites, and the nobility quickly became divided and tense. But the things at home were started to look pretty damn shaky, and that was nothing compared to what was happening across the English Channel. Do you want to read number 14 then, Amy?
Sure.
Go on then, Amy.
From the moment Henry V left this world, the French set about reclaiming the lands he had conquered. With Joan of Arc leading the French to victory, English holdings in France had been steadily shrinking for years. When Henry VI took over, he did nothing to help matters. Fighting scared him, and he listened to anyone who suggested that he seek peace with France.
I think he was a good man.
I know. It says many in England were furious that their new king would so readily give up the lands they fought tooth and nail for, and Henry soon found himself with some powerful enemies. One of the loudest voices who spoke for fighting in France was Richard, Duke of York.
And don't forget the dukes came in next.
Yes. And one of the most powerful men in England. Henry ignored the Duke's protests, but he would live to regret it. And then it says his marriage was a good thing, at least, though Henry's failure in France is a dark stain on his legacy. At least it led to the
well, that's really what?
Because
he didn't want to fight and conquer, and he wanted peace.
Right. So he said his pursuit of peace led to his marriage to the gorgeous and cunning French princess Margaret of Anjou. I guess you say it. Henry was absolutely smitten, and he was willing to do anything to marry her, though the cost would turn out to be painfully high. Henry's supporters suggested that he marry Margaret, and he was all too desperate to agree. He just needed the approval of King Charles VI of France, who
Seventh.
was no fool.
Oh no, it's fifth to seventh, isn't it?
I don't have my glasses.
It's all right, Amy.
7th. Yeah,
I know
right.
it's all confusing anyway, but carry on.
Who was no fool. Charles was a far more effective ruler than Henry, and he made sure to take the English king to the cleaners. Normally, marrying a king meant that the bride's family would cough up an extravagant dowry, but not in this case. Charles not only got Henry to waive the dowry, but he actually got the English king to give him the extremely valuable French province of Maine. Henry would do anything to avoid conflict, so he agreed, a decision that would come back to haunt him. Well,
we're just going to read this and then we're going to finish, because it's just, we're just doing Henry VI, and I said it started with him. They obviously saw him as weak and wanted to take it over, which is why the Edward the Fourth came in to carry on the War of the Roses and the rest of it. But anyway, carry on, Amy.
Yes, well, it says that he tried to keep a shameful secret. Henry and his advisors were well aware that giving up Maine would be extremely unpopular, so they kept that little detail from the English public when they announced the marriage. But people were going to notice sooner or later, and when they did, they were absolutely furious. In just a few years, they went from having a king who conquered much of France to one who gave up that land for free. If people disliked Henry and his cronies before, they utterly hated them now, and it was only about to get worse. And then it goes on to talk about Margaret. Many people hated her, the beautiful Margaret of Anjou, but everyone respected her. She was intelligent, capable, and above all else ambitious. And she wrote a song of ice and fire, and Margaret inspired George R.R. Martin to create one of his most cold-blooded characters, Cersei Lannister. The only difference is Cersei, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, was fictional, while Margaret's dark deeds were all too real. Margaret took great inspiration from her mother, Isabella, which was the formidable Duchess of Lorraine. When a rival took Margaret's father captive, Isabella personally led an army to rescue her husband. Afterward, Isabella would continue to take an active role in ruling her husband's domain. So surprised that Margaret learned to fight for what was hers. Henry VI was lucky to have her. Without his wife by his side, he'd have been toast in an instant.
So she was far more warring than her husband, but carry on.
Yes, and it said he was mad. It says he was mad and prudish. Unlike so many other English kings, Henry VI never took a mistress. Maybe Henry loved no one but Margaret, but others have suggested a slightly stranger reason. It was long rumored that Henry had a hopeless phobia of naked bodies. According to one chronicler, Henry literally ran away in fear after a lord brought a gang of bare-chested ladies to a Christmas celebration as a dirty joke. It took nearly a decade of marriage for Margaret to get pregnant, and most people placed the blame for that one on Henry's inability in the bedroom. The king apparently had absolutely no idea what he was doing, and people noticed. Reportedly, some of the couple's most trusted attendants eventually joined them in the bedroom to ensure that they did the deed properly.
Oh my God! Anyway, they've now got a black princess in. Where's she come from?
I see that. Yes.
They've stuck a black princess or someone with a black lady with a crown in. So yeah. Anyway.
Right.
The Hollow Crown, 12012 BBC.
Yeah, 2012. It must have been a story or a TV on BBC. So he loved his wife dearly. They may have had their fair share of political struggles, but by all accounts, Henry and Margaret had a tender relationship. The couple once kicked off New Year's celebrations by receiving their gifts in bed, where they lay in their PJs and pillows all morning. They were like the John and Yoko of their day, and sadly their union met in a similarly tragic end.
How many more of these, Amy? 124 now.
Odd, I know, 24, 25. Let's see. I think it goes up. Oh, it's a lot of them. At least to 30.
Oh, that's okay. Then we're finished there because we've been going for nearly an hour now.
Yes.
But we're just explaining. We'll just give our theory, our answer at the end of it. Yeah. Go on then.
Yes. Oh well. Did you want me to?
Yeah, carry on. We'll finish these because we're here, aren't we?
Yeah. Okay. So. Now I forgot which one I left
24.
off. 24. With 24. Oh, okay. So then. Then 24. Oh, he had a weird way of showing his affection. In his more lucid years, a young Henry greeted his bride by disguising himself as a squire and, quote, unmasking his royal identity to her in a show of courtly love and pageantry. But this was during all too brief good days. Soon enough, their entire world would be thrown into chaos. 25. He let England fall apart. If you thought that losing Maine was rock bottom for Henry VI, you'd be way off. He could sink way, way lower. The following years saw England completely go to the dogs. The economy didn't improve. Corruption became rampant in every level of government, and the countryside fell to anarchy as law and order completely broke down.
It sounds like we're at that point now.
Sounds exactly.
Yeah, nothing's changed then.
The people were angry, and it was only a matter of time before they did something about it. It says 26's friends were utterly hated. The Duke of Suffolk was one of Henry's favorite advisors and one of the most hated men in England. Notably, Suffolk was the driving force behind seeking peace in France.
Well, he was a good man then.
Yes, and he'd been the one to suggest the marriage to Margaret, and he'd been quick to agree that Maine was a fair price to pay. While Henry loved him, many nobles considered Suffolk's actions outright treacherous.
Well, because they only wanted to fight.
They wanted to fight, and Henry did everything in his power to protect Suffolk, but he couldn't prevent his friend from meeting his dark fate. And then 27, he caved to pressure. A more effective king might have been able to protect Suffolk, but Henry was pretty much useless. He powerlessly watched as Parliament impeached Suffolk in front of an angry mob calling for the man's blood. Realizing his friend's life was in danger, Henry bent to the mob's will and exiled Suffolk. But that wasn't good enough for his enemies. They had a much more gruesome sentence in mind. As Suffolk sailed across the English Channel to exile, defeated but alive, his enemies caught up to him. Fishermen found his body washed up on the beach at Dover not long after. His demise shocked England and proved to everyone just how much the king's world meant. The writing was on the wall. Henry VI's days as king were numbered. And then it says that he founded some schools, at least. It says, though Henry was a catastrophic failure of a king, it's not like he didn't accomplish anything. He hated fighting, but he was very interested in other matters such as religion and education. He actually founded, is it Eton College? Okay, and King's College, Cambridge. Two legendary institutions that stand to this day, but this was not a time for men of letters. It was a time for men of war, and war was coming. And it says he picked the worst person to lead his armies. Eventually, Henry decided to fight for his territories in France, but he still managed to screw it up. He made the hapless Duke of Somerset the leader of the English forces, which turned out to be a huge mistake. Somerset, who had until that point been firmly against fighting in France made a complete mess of things across the water. Within a year of taking up the fight, the Duke had lost all of Normandy, the jewel of Henry V's prizes in France, and that was just the start of his screw-ups.
There's more, Amy. We're on 31. How far do we have to go?
Let's see. I'm just scrolling through. I think it goes to, gosh, it might go up to 40 some. I'm always looking 43, 44, 35. Like his whole life story. But what it is, it's telling you all about, kind of just elaborating on some of the things that we've been talking about.
Oh, go on then. Carry on then, Amy.
How he went mad.
Carry on then.
Or they said he went mad. Let's see. So then, where he
31.
31. Okay. Let's see. Oh, so he saw England fall to chaos. Pushed out of France, many beleaguered Englishmen limped back to English shores, only to find there was no money to pay them. Many of these men took to roaming the countryside, raiding villages to keep food on the table. England became a truly scary place to live, and Henry VI was completely incapable of doing anything about it. And all that happened before Henry lost his mind. That's when things really got out of hand. But with Normandy in their hands, the French saw blood in the water and went in for the kill. First, they reclaimed, the valuable Duchy of Aquitaine, which the English had held for 300 years. The French didn't stop there either. They kept going until England possessed nothing but the city of Calais in the north. Just a few decades.
That's Calais.
How do you say it? Calais?
Yeah, Calais. That's where where we sail to. You know, when we get on the boat and we go to France, one of the stops is Calais.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's all right. Carry on. It's good that I'm not the only one that doesn't read it. Like, gets confused when we're reading. It's a different thing to do when you're reading it in front of all these people. It's, you know people are going to listen. Right, carry on, Amy.
Just a few decades earlier, it seemed like France was set to become just another English province. But Henry VI screwed up so badly that he lost it all in a matter of years. The loss of Bordeaux was the final nail in the coffin, and when Henry heard about it, his feeble mind finally snapped. So that's what they're saying. Made him crazy. The news that he'd lost Bordeaux quite literally drove Henry insane. He had a total mental breakdown and became completely unresponsive for over a year. After spending the better part of a decade waiting for a child with his wife, even the birth of his son Edward of Westminster couldn't snap him out of it. And through all this time, the situation in England was only getting more and more dire. Modern historians believe that Henry's madness might have been caused by schizophrenia. He may have inherited this from his grandfather, King Charles VI of France, who suffered from similar bouts of insanity throughout his life. While Henry was incapacitated, his enemies began to gather. Richard, the Duke of York, who'd been such a vocal critic of Henry, used his power and influence to get himself named as protector of the realm, while Henry couldn't rule. York also allied with another of England's most powerful men, Richard Neville, the Earl of Warwick, better known as the Kingmaker. Together, these two men set about claiming England for themselves, and they resorted to some pretty devious tricks to do it. York and Warwick weren't stupid, so they realized that their greatest adversary wasn't Henry. It was the ruthless Queen, Margaret of Anjou, who posed the biggest threat. So when York became protector, he quickly marginalized Margaret, allowing her absolutely no say in matters of state. But that was just the beginning of their plots against her.
You know, when they're
Margaret,
talking about the War of the Roses, she was there. They were going to her, and she was coming into the battles, and because obviously she wanted it back for her son, didn't she?
right. And it said that she had good reason, Margaret had good reason to be wary of Richard of York. By some interpretations, the Duke actually had a better claim to the throne than Henry himself. If she wasn't careful, she might see everything she'd earned taken from her, but still, with her husband incapacitated, all she could do was bide her time and wait for her moment.
And that's something I think we're going to have to look up, the Hollow Crown of 1212.
Yeah, because they have all these pictures.
Yeah, I'm going to write that down, Amy, so that we're going to keep that for another day. So, the Hollow Crown. But again, they're showing another black lady again.
Yes.
Right, that's another day. I've got that there, Amy. Hollow Crown.
Karen.
Right, on we go then.
His enemies spread dark rumors, so to plant the seed of doubt in the English people, York and Warwick spread rumors that Margaret was having an affair with the Duke of Somerset, and that her son, Edward of Westminster, wasn't actually Henry's. Not only did this make people distrust their French queen even more, but it also opened the door for someone else to become Henry's heir, namely York himself. Now, to be fair, it says Henry was famously scared.
Yeah, there you go. They've got her as black, haven't they? Look, there's Henry
Yeah.
There's Henry the Sixth with a black wife.
Yeah. You're right.
So Henry the Sixth was a half black man.
Yeah, I guess so.
Wow. Anyway, carry on, Amy.
So it says that Henry was famously scared of naked bodies, and he wasn't exactly the most virile of men at the best of times. The rumors were very well could have been true, but in the end it doesn't really matter. York and Warwick had made an enemy of Margaret of Anjou, and she was not someone to be crossed lightly.
Well, if that's true, say it's true, she knew more of the truth, didn't she? About what was really going on. Anyway, carry on.
She would, you're right. He didn't recognize his own son. Just how bad was Henry's mental breakdown? When he finally came to, he was utterly astonished to discover that he had a son, even though the boy had been presented to him a year earlier. He finally woke up that the world had changed. Henry finally came to his senses around Christmas of 1454, and he woke up to a world that was completely different than the one he left. He had a son. Richard of York was protector of the realm. Nobles were saying that York should usurp him and take the throne. But again, Henry found himself in a tense situation that required firm leadership. And what did he do? He made everyone hold hands. Seriously. His biggest plan was Love Day. Henry VI's great plan to ease tensions and save his reign was to hold a holiday called Love Day. In 1458, Henry forced all of England's most important nobles to hold hands and walk from Westminster Palace to St. Paul's Cathedral. He specifically tried to make sure that the people who hated each other the most walked hand in hand. He coupled Richard of York himself with Queen Margaret of Anjou. And if you thought this day couldn't be any more awkward, it actually happened after the two squabbling factions had actually met in battle. If there was anyone Richard of York hated more than Margaret, it was probably the Duke of Somerset. York was a cunning and capable leader, while Somerset was pretty much useless. So imagine how furious York was when Henry exiled him away in Ireland and sent the sycophantic Somerset off to France. Richard had to sit and watch as Somerset lost battle after battle, giving up nearly all of England's territory. So when Richard finally claimed power during the madness of Henry VI, The first person he set his sights upon was the Duke of Somerset, as if sitting in Ireland as his incompetent rival lost all of England's territory and France wasn't bad enough. Richard still had Margaret of Anjou to deal with. The vicious queen allegedly made several attempts on York's, while he was staying in Ireland, but to no avail. York lived to take power, and he never forgot any of the people who crossed him. He freed his incompetent friend. While he was protector, Richard had Somerset thrown behind bars. To the delight of many, Somerset's failures in France were a national embarrassment, and few were sad to see him go. Seems like a no-brainer, but there was one problem. Henry VI loved the Duke of Somerset, no matter how much he screwed up. As soon as Henry came back to the world of the living, he released Somerset and gave him all of his power back. For Richard of York, this was the last straw.
Sounds to me like they imprisoned him, to be honest. They stopped. It does. Yeah,
yes.
carry on.
Finally fed up with his embarrassment of a king, Richard of York decided to take matters into his own hands. Well aware that the newly restored Duke of Somerset would probably bring charges against him, he gathered an army and set off to face Somerset directly. The two forces met at St. Albans in a battle that would go down in history. The first battle of St. Albans might not seem like that big of a deal on paper. 5,000 men took part, and fewer than 60 were lost. However, on a political scale, it couldn't have been more important. Richard of York achieved his main goal with the Duke of Somerset dying in battle, but he accomplished so much more than that. He managed to capture Henry VI and forced the king to name him as Lord Protector of England. The tensions would bubble for the next few years before battle broke out again. This marked the start of the War of the Roses.
There you go. There you go.
Oh, yes. Henry's well-intentioned but utterly ridiculous, quote, love day actually took place after St. Albans. That's right, Henry forced the sons of men who'd been slain in the battle to hold hands with the very people who slew them. As you can imagine, these mortal enemies needed a little more than that to make amends, and almost as soon as Love Day ended, fighting broke out once again. No, Love Day couldn't stop the War of the Roses, and soon the king's Lancastrians and Richard's Yorkists were battling once again. Just 2 years later, the two sides met in the field at the Battle of, is that Northampton?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Though feeble, Henry himself showed up on the battlefield with his fierce wife Margaret and young son Edward at his side. He hoped it would inspire his men, but it ended in utter disaster.
How many more to go, Amy?
I think it's only a couple.
Excellent.
More.
Carry on then.
Go. It says that he ended in utter disaster because his enemies captured him over and over. Henry's armies faced the combined forces of Richard of York and the Kingmaker at the Battle of Northampton. The rebels routed Henry's men, and once again they managed to take the feeble king prisoner. But while her husband had lost the battle, Margaret was not about to let England fall through her fingers that easily. With the king as prisoner, Richard of York forced Henry VI to disinherit his own son and make him the heir to the throne. Never mind that Richard was many years older than Henry. The cowardly Henry didn't put up much of a fight, but Richard forgot about one key person. His wife fought back. Up to this point, Richard of York seemed like he couldn't lose, but he underestimated his greatest enemy, Margaret of Anjou. While York held her husband captive and made a mockery of the crown, Margaret went out and raised an army to fight for what was hers. But just desperate times called for desperate measures, and the men she gathered were a truly fearsome sight. Beggars can't be choosers, so Margaret had to take anyone she could get, and that meant the roving bands of outlaws in the English countryside were fair game. With her son by her side, she convinced these men that York was a deceiver and that her boy was the true heir to the throne. She must have had a way with words, because they ate it up and joined her side. She finally brought this army against York's at the Battle of Wakefield. By the time the fight
Amy,
is
how
up,
many more
the
have we got
entire
to read?
nation will be thrown on its head. And
Hang on, I'm just going to check myself. 56, 57, 58. Oh, does it stop at 59?
No, I
60,
think it goes...
61. I told you this was a really... I think what we'll do is we'll just quickly go through it, because we're going to be here... Where have we got to? I've forgotten now. We're going to be here forever reading this.
Yeah.
So we're up here. So he started winning Battle of Wakefield, right? We'll just read it a little. We'll just let them read it themselves.
Yeah, let them read it there. You could put the link in, maybe, and they could read it for themselves.
And then... But fight was far from over. Though Margaret had defeated Richard, the Loyalists, the Yorkists weren't able to roll over. So it carries on there. Henry looked even worse by compassion. He finally lost his throne. Obviously, this is what they wanted. They had him as a puppet. And he didn't do what they wanted, and then they really couldn't wait to get him out.
That's right.
And then this becomes Edward now.
Yes.
He made a massive mistake. He didn't manage to capture Henry or, importantly, Margaret. The deposed king and queen fled to Scotland, where they bided their time and planned their next move. But I think he came back and he ruled for a bit more. And while Margaret made her plans, Henry was still completely useless and didn't stay for long. 58, spent months on the run. So you can just stop the video and have a look at it. His allies betrayed him. Just seemed that they wanted him as a puppet from the beginning, and he didn't want to be.
Yes.
Oh, this is about Edward now. You might be wondering why Edward didn't just execute Henry and be done with it, but he had a better plan in mind. Edward, like everyone else, knew that Henry was completely useless. I don't think he was. He just wanted peace.
That's right.
So anyway, you can read that. Just stop and read it.
Yes.
It's too long. We'll be here forever. His wife teamed up with her nemesis to save him. There you go. Just stop and read it. The King Master regretted his decision. Just stop and read it after the hangout. Just stop, because obviously I think we'll make this into a hangout, Amy. It's that long, this one.
Okay, right, God, yes.
When Neville came to Margaret for help, she made sure he knew who was boss. So, wow, did you know all this about Henry VI?
No, I did not. It's fascinating.
But we don't know how much of this is true, do we?
Right, no, we don't.
Kingmaker says that people took advantage of him. He lost his mind for good. Henry was so far gone. Well, maybe it wasn't that. He just wanted a different outcome. So just shut him up. They pretended he was mad and imprisoned him.
Right, that's what could very well be.
Yeah, for part the king. And it says that no, his one-time enemy ran the show. There you go. Just read that one. It's too much. We can't. He was running out of time. His rivals returned with armies. It's all with the War of the Roses. He lost his heir by the point Margaret's son, Edward. We're on to Edward now. Well, this is all to do with Edward. Do you think we should stop, Amy? This is to do with Edward.
Yes, we could stop.
We're going to stop at 72. We're going to stop. Amy, let's go back. Let's go back up here where we've got a pic. There we go. That's him there. Right. So what's your making of all that then?
Well, it sounds like they used Henry VI. It sounds like he kind of got the whole War of the Roses kicked off, it wasn't his fault, but because he was just a little baby when he became king. And then when he finally was old enough to become king, everybody else had run everything for him, and he didn't like all the fighting and everything. So then all these stronger people that liked fighting, or even just wanted to keep England, strong or whatever, they had to make all the decisions, and it all kind of kicked off this war of
I
the
think
roses.
something else happened, Amy. I think that they're covering what really happened, and they kept him shut up.
Wow,
Made
that's
him
a
mad.
good point.
Lied.
Yes. I agree, Karen.
We're gonna put this as a hangout. I just wondered what's everybody's thoughts, because it sounds like, well, so it all started happening with Henry VI. Then we have Edward IV, Edward V, and Edward V only lasted a very short amount of time, and then comes Richard III. Then comes Henry VII, Henry VIII, Elizabeth I. Oh, and we've gone from Plantagenet to the Yorks to the Tudors. And then when we get to Henry VIII, he's changed the whole of religion.
Yes.
What an amazing few hundred years of history, although we don't know quite what's right and wrong yet. But we might even do more delving and come back to this, because we want the truth. And it doesn't seem that they treated Henry VI very well. He wasn't a bad king. He was a good king.
That's right.
I think that they were gagging him. Like, they'd gagged him from a baby, and they just kept gagging him.
I think so too. I think so too.
Well, we're going to stop here, because I thought we were just going to find it out. Boom! And now we've got even more information. Like, wow!
Yes.
Anyway, Amy, thank you so much for that. And
oh, you're welcome.
To be continued, because obviously I did a part of it yesterday, because I told you, someone said it's all in the 100 Years' War, but in there is the War of the Roses, and it went on for 116 years, not 100 years. So I don't know why they call it the 100-Year War, and it was 116.
Right.
I don't know we'll ever find the truth, because this is what they've done. They've mixed and matched and done this, and all you've got to do is someone write a book, and then, oh, that's children, this is the story of history, and it just goes on like that, when I don't think it happened the way that they've said. And this guy here, Henry VI, was a good man.
Yes, I agree.
I think that's what we'll call the hangout. Henry VI was a good man.
A good man, yes.
Amy,
I like that.
Anything you want to say before we go?
Oh, just thank you for including me in all of this.
Now you've got a headache.
I'm learning a lot of so much English history that we didn't even learn it in America. Thank God we didn't have to learn all those details, but it is fascinating.
Wow, just even Henry VI is enough to take on board, isn't it?
It really is. But it sounds like that with him is where all this kicked off.
So as a baby, everybody was running it except him. He obviously wanted to take over and be the rightful king, as he was, but he couldn't because of all these nobles always telling him, so let's make him insane. Let's make him this. When really he just wanted peace.
Yeah.
So I call him a good man. And that's if that's true. Because we don't know. It's called his story.
Exactly. It's always depends on the point of view as well. They say the victors write the history, so yeah.
I still find it really weird. I actually said it at the beginning. So you've got from Edward III to Elizabeth I. They all hate each other. 3 houses are there for the Plantagenets, the Yorks, and the Tudor. And at the same time, they all hate each other, but they're all becoming Richard III. Well, they're just carrying on the names. Why would they do that if they hated each other? So we don't even know if this history is even correct, because say for instance, I hate Amy and her family, I kill her, but I'm going to become Queen Amy. It doesn't add up, does it?
Right. No, it doesn't add up at all.
It's probably because they were black. A lot of them were black kings and queens, and they've just gone shh to make it the way it is, and stuck in this War of the Roses where something happened in there. But oh my God, the War of the Roses, the whole of that is just It's like doing the okey cokey and we turn around and that's what it's all about. Whoa, the okey cokey. Whoa, it's just amazing, the War of the Roses. That's just a headache, that is.
Oh, it is.
You can't even work out who's won and the whole thing going on, but I do know that the Queen of France was in there. Oh,
yes.
she was in there, obviously battling. Oh, battle for England.
Right.
Anyway, Amy,
Yeah.
we're finishing now.
Okay, Karen.
Love you, Amy. Thank you so much.
Love you too, Karen. You're welcome.
Bye from us, everybody, and I hope no one's got a headache.
Hey, that's right.